Hello, I'm Dr. Timothy Lewis talking about chapter 6 of the book, The Poetics of Matthew 1. So this time in chapter 6, it's about what kind of Genesis it is in verse 18. So it's a similar question to in chapter 2 when it was looking at what kind of Genesis it was in verse 1. So this word reappears again this time. So the first time it was apparently introducing the lineage of begettings. Abraham begot Isaac. Isaac begot Jacob. So this begetting, the begettingness, the progeneration is how I've been translating it for verse 1. So what about in verse 18 when it says the Messiah's progeneration? The Messiah, Jesus's Genesis, literally. So what exactly is it? Is it similar to the first time in verse 1, or is it something different? So usually scholars have gone for, well, it's a little bit different, and they've thought, well, perhaps it's talking about the birth of Jesus. But then in this passage, we don't find out really much about the actual birth, when, where, who was there. It's not really about the birth. So some scholars have thought, well, okay, it's not about birth. Perhaps it's about conception, but we've already looked in chapter 4 that conception isn't mentioned in this passage. So it's not, what is it about? So is there a way to find out the answer according to the text? And yes, fortunately, the text is structured in such a way that the sentences pair up together. So the first sentence that we have here in verse 18, we've got two sentences. So if we ignore the verse numbers, which are much later, it's only at the time of the printing presses that the verse numbers get added into the text. So if we ignore the verse numbers and just look at the sentences, then we see that the final sentence matches the first sentence. So this chapter is looking at the structure of verses 18 to 25, but without looking at the verse numbers, which makes it sometimes a little bit awkward to try and talk about a particular sentence without the number, because that's what the numbers do. The verse numbers really help us to talk about this bit, this bit, this bit. This verse has a number. But if we take the verse numbers away, it's hard to talk about them. But fortunately, we do have a nice structure. So I don't know if it'll come out on the screen. If I keep it really still, it might. It's what people call a chiastic structure, or a symmetrical structure, or a concentric structure, because it has a center. So in the middle of this symmetrical concentric structure, we have this whole thing occurred so as to be a fulfillment of that which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet. And then it quotes Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. So that quotation has four parts. Well, Matthew adds a fourth part in it, which is translated, God is with us. So we've got this fourth part added into the quotation itself. And that matches the four parts of the prophetic birth announcement that Joseph was given just before the center. So just before the center, we have, for the child is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son. You shall call his name Jesus, for he shall save his people from their sins. So that has four parts to it as well. And that matches the four parts of the Isaiah quotation. And so those four parts, we have something really noticeable about the kind of pregnancy being a really important pregnancy that's on the way. And then she will give birth to a son, so the birth of a son, and then the name, what the name will be called, and then the meaning or significance of that name. They're the 4 parts. And so we can see that either side of the center, we've got these matching sentences that have 4 parts to them. And then either side of that, we have sentences that match with the same elements. So not every sentence has 4 elements in it, but I think there are 4 elements in the next sentence prior and the next sentence after. So having resolved to do these things, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream, saying, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary your wife. That has 4 elements as well, because we've got angel of the Lord, instruction, resolution to put into action, and sleep or dream. So those same 4 elements appear after, on the other side. So this is why I've labeled them. F is in the middle, E and E prime, D and D prime. So D prime has Joseph rising from sleep, did what was commanded to him by the angel of the Lord. So we have those same 4 elements. And so it's a very fascinating look at, well, this really is structured so neatly. We've got the matching sentences paired up, either side. So you go further and further outwards. So the next one out, we have Joseph's plan to divorce Mary quietly. He's trying to not be together with Mary, but not in a way that's going to cause a fuss or any shame to Mary. And so he's trying to just to not be a couple with Mary. And then we'll find on the other side, the matching sentence, just a little sentence here. He took his wife. So he took Mary to be his wife, which is what he was trying not to do in C. And then B and B, matching sentences. And then we finally get to A and A, which this is what the point of the chapter is about. Well, it's got 2 points. One is to show the structure, and then, well, that helps us to answer the question, the genesis of the Messiah in the first sentence. So the Jesus Messiah progeneration in in sentence A matches the final sentence, which is, he called his name Jesus. So which is a reference to Joseph calling the name for the child that he was told, he was instructed, this is the name to call the child. So he was told to just be with Mary and to raise the child as their child, as a couple. And so this is the instruction that he was told to call this name. So this reminds us of the prophecy that he was given and how that links with the prophecy that was previously given, and the mission of the child. He has this destiny of salvation. It's in the name. This is the only part in the New Testament that talks about the significance of Jesus, the name Jesus. What's the significance of that name? And so the link with the meaning of the name and the meaning of the name has this mission. So all of these things that are there are part of this progeneration of the heir of Joseph. So the heir of Joseph, who is the son of David, the heir of the Davidic lineage. So it's this inheritance of lineage, but also this inheritance of a name and a mission. And I've probably spent a long time reading this. Explaining this, I could have just read the whole chapter out, perhaps. So it's not a particularly long chapter, but it is very helpful for us to be able to understand what kind of progeneration, what kind of Genesis it's referring to in verse 18 of Matthew chapter 1.